Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 155 for Monday, August 23rd, 2021. My name is Joel Duggan, and Johnny is on vacation this week, but I am happy to have GeminiTay here to co-host the show with me. If you're not familiar, GeminiTay is a longtime Minecraft creator, recently crossing the milestone of 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Currently keeping busy on both the Hermitcraft and the Empires multiplayer server. You can find her on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch at GeminiTay, sometimes GeminiTay MC, depending on where you're looking. And I cannot say how excited I am to have you back on the show, Gem.
Well, hello everyone. Hello, Joel. Happy to be filling in here for the lovely Johnny. Happy to be back as well. It's my second time on the show.
It is. For folks looking to archive dive, they can check out the Spawn Chunks episode number 77, a creative conversation with GeminiTay. That was back in February of 2020. And if you'd like to hear more about what Gemini does outside of Minecraft, including cod fishing and secluded beaches in rural Newfoundland, then check out the render distance. That's the extended version of the podcast. You can get that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. You can support the show, join the Discord, and get the extended version of the show all at once. We can't thank you enough. It's a great way to keep the show going. And hey, you get extra GeminiTay, so can't complain.
Everybody wants that.
So normally on the show, we do a quick login where we talk about what we have been up to in Minecraft, and I usually let the guest go first. So, Gem, what's new in your Minecraft world these days?
Oh, so many things are new in my Minecraft world. I am currently a part of 2 Minecraft worlds, Hermitcraft and Empires. I've been working super hard on my Empires base recently. I have a giant woodland mansion going in a cottagecore style. Very cool. I got to work with Doc, Ren, and Pearl just yesterday on a project, which was so much fun. I have been watching Doc probably since I was like 15, 16, and I'm 25 now. So to get to work with him on some projects has been just incredible. Like the best thing ever. He's so cool. I've been also playing a lot on Empires, challenging myself with some storytelling, some role play, which has been really fun getting to write this wizard character that I'm working with. It's really been fantastic. What about you?
I don't do a lot of role play. Our time on the Sigil server has been mostly just kind of like building visual projects, but then most of us are just kind of like ourselves. There's themes. Like my friend Alistair has an obsession with lava. It's just kind of something fun that he leans into when he does live streams and stuff like that. So like how do you find the role play? Is that something that you've done in other games, like tabletop games or other experiences before?
I haven't. I've never played a game of Dungeons and Dragons, but I would love to, because the roleplay that we're doing here, I'm told, is very similar to it. So I think that I would love something like that. But it's been so much fun getting into these different characters, and everybody on the server has a different character. I'm a wizard, some people are kings and queens, and everybody has these different themes. We get to interact. There's a demon on the server at the moment haunting all of us. It's just so much fun, and I can tell that the audience is really enjoying the story as well. Getting to read the fan theories has been amazing. Just a good time all around.
That's going to be really cool too, as creators, a server full of content creators as Empires is, where you can have a little backstory that you all know behind the scenes, even if it's just a loose outline, because there's a lot of ad-libbing and just random stuff that happens in Minecraft that you can't plan. But to know where it's going, and then to see the input from fans kind of guessing where it's going, and having that we'll say spark of mystery kind of like pique interest for viewers. Have you found that's been helpful in terms of both your creativity, but also like in like viewer engagement?
It has been, yeah. The fan theories, especially in the comments, oh my gosh, it's so much fun. It's something that we do on Empires all the time, as we compare all of these fan arts and things that are happening. And it really challenges me, because it's not something that I did before. I mean, I've latched onto little stories before in my worlds, but it's never been like, I'm a magical wizard who needs to fight this demon and get through the, like, it's never been that deep of a storyline with so many cross connections to other players. So it's actually been helpful to see how the audience reacts, because I get to balance my character off of that. Like, if I'm going too hard and with the demon and people want more of, Empire stuff, war and trades, then I get to kind of bounce off of them. And it's just been a really cool collaborative event.
We've been trying to do more collaborative stuff on the Citadel, but I often find scheduling with other members is a little bit challenging, because everybody on there is like a busy working full-time adult with often children. So it's like evenings, weekends, time zones, like it's kind of hard to line things up.
Right.
Depending on which server we're talking about, like, do you find one easier to schedule, kind of like collabs than the other?
Well, because on both servers, I'm pretty sure everyone is full time into Minecraft, so it hasn't actually been too hard. Like, normally, if somebody messages me, like if Flip is like, hey, I have this quick idea, can you get on real quick right now? Usually I'm like, yeah, I can get on right now. And, and it just works out that way. Of course, sometimes we do have to schedule things, but most people have times of the day that they're trying to be more available. Like 8 p.m. BST for some reason is available worldwide on both servers that I'm on. Everybody's always ready to go at that time. So it just works out. There's certain times we know people are available. There's certain days you kind of get used to everybody's schedule. Like some people take weekends, some people take Mondays, Tuesdays off, and just kind of get used to it and schedule around it.
I do try to take my weekends off from my regular work, but that's kind of where I fit in my Minecraft time is on
Right.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But I've had decent luck in the last little while. Even though I do stream on weekends, I find that I can still block my evenings. Like, I like to cook. And so when it comes down to like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I can usually block at a time where I'm just not available to do, computer stuff.
Right.
The exception being sometimes I'll do like extra podcasts and things like that. So for me on the Citadel this week, I finished the interior of my Riverside warehouse that I've been working on for the last little while. And I've been really happy with the way that it's turned out. I actually stole a few ideas from a friend of yours, actually. I saw Pearlescent Moon do some large barrel designs on Hermitcraft, and I thought, I'm going to steal those. And they worked out rather well. To try and fill up some space. And the build is full of like secret corridors, and it's so nice to have a couple little custom textures. Like I use a crate texture on my note block. A note block on its own can sort of pass for a crate, but if you actually make it look like a crate in Minecraft, it doesn't really, I feel, turn or take away from anything else in Minecraft, because people don't generally decorate with note blocks all the time. So I've been using those kind of like little custom tweaks to kind of help sell the inside of my builds.
Wow, yeah, those look beautiful. I'm looking at them now. I love the scale that you work on, all the little details that you fit into it.
Thank you.
So perfect for the Minecraft player.
That means a lot coming from you. Let me say, it's a challenge for me to get into the micro stuff, like the chains and the grindstones and all the little things that people do. I take notes whenever I see a new use for like a sub block on a stream or a video that I'm watching, because it's not something that I'm kind of accustomed to. I try to do things at player scale. I know there's like almost like a player and a half scale that you see sometimes, and I know I bump up my roofs. My roofs tend to be a little bit bigger than an average house would be, because I think that you just get more detail into it and it looks a little bit better in Minecraft. But yeah, the challenging thing for me lately has been the textures, in particular the textures of the new blocks, and trying to figure out what tough works well with and what deep slate works well with. And
yes.
When you're working on a build that's only like 7 or 9 blocks wide, it's really difficult not to have it look like a checkerboard sometimes.
It can be, yeah. You have to be careful with those gradients, especially the high contrast ones. You need ones that blend together. But the deep slate can be a little tricky. It's a little high contrast next to the stone, but it seems like you're making it work.
Thanks. Yeah, and I do find it tricky. It's one of those things that I get questions a lot when I stream. It's like, Joel, do you build these beforehand? Like, do you do these in creative before you build them live on streams? Like, no, that's why it's taken me 3 hours to build this one wall. it's a lot of me like breaking a block and replacing a block and moving it like one block to the left, and people are just like, what are you doing? I'm just like,
oh yes, I relate.
Like, just let me do the thing. It's hard to sometimes articulate as I'm doing it, but I do try to find like that color balance. I find being an artist in real life is nice. It does help with trying to kind of trick the eye into thinking that this 9 block wide gradient actually works. But I'm really digging the 2-tier design. Like, I like the functionality of these builds. I've got a staircase inside, there's a staircase outside, there's a secret passageway underneath that leads into 2 other buildings. Like, that kind of stuff I just find is fun. And we'll talk about this later in the show, actually. I try not to fly around the town too much. Like, if I'm just working in an area, I'll tend to walk around. and then I'll walk
Right,
a
yeah.
different path every time I go because I can go upstairs,
No, yeah, that's
downstairs.
this type of thing. It works perfectly with this scale of build. It's built for the Minecraft player. It's perfect for that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to invite some of the other server members around to like walk around on their own. And it would be kind of fun. I mean, some of them have watched some streams, but it'd be kind of fun to see where they go on their own without any direction
Ah,
from me.
yeah.
Like, go in, walk around, see what you find, and just not really give them any kind of like directions or tour guides or anything like that. I'm happy with the roof. I was struggling with the roof last time, and I feel like I've managed to solidify it so that it doesn't look like it's floating. A couple of trapdoors, a couple of note blocks, that kind of stuff tended to kind of like help it be settled on top. But I it's one of those things where you kind of have to step away and say like, well, that's as good as it's going to get on this scale, and I don't want to make it any taller because there's a number of things behind it. You can't see it in the screenshot that I shared, but there's a number of things behind it that I don't want to block the view. When you're building
Hmm.
your towns, because you do wonderful like cottage type designs with like peaky roofs and all kinds of great stuff, do you find that you're also looking at the landscape? Like, are you looking at like, I want to build this thing here, but I also don't want to obstruct other things? Like, do you use that kind of guide to
Yeah,
scale your
I do
builds?
look at that a little bit, but you can obstruct things so that there's a grand reveal when you walk past them. Like that's a method that I tend to use or use it as an excuse so that I can put massive roofs on my builds because I do prefer that very fantasy ginormous roofs that doesn't make any sense but looks really cool. It's kind of the style that I've been going for right now, but it works for me because in my Hermitcraft base, for example, I put my main base on a big hill, so it's not hidden anyways. It works out.
Right. Yeah, the keep in this town is up on a hill as well. For that reason, like I didn't want to build the keep like crazy tall, but if by putting it up
Hmm.
on top of the hill, of course, you can see it from pretty much everywhere. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, cottagecore, and I'm not familiar
Right.
with the term. So, like for anybody that isn't, like what does cottagecore mean?
I'm very bad at describing this. Actually, Joe Hills asked me to describe it once, and I was like, Joe, I I can't help you with this. It's basically just an aesthetic of sorts. Like you get a very like naturey, like picture a cottage in the woods with a little vegetable garden next to it, and some pretty maybe rose bushes, some flowers, some mushrooms, like just very naturey, simple aesthetic.
Okay, so very rural.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
definitely.
Okay. Lots of like growth and nature in it. Okay. Cool. Interesting. I haven't heard the term before, so I was curious about it. The other thing that I worked on this weekend, I didn't finish it because I'm not entirely sure on the placement, but I put a stable in between the blacksmith and the church, and going for another thatched roof. We had a lot of success with the last one I did, and it's far enough away from the apothecary that it's not going to clash or anything like that. And it's challenging because it's a 45-degree angle build, and I always find them a little bit tricky.
Ah, yeah, I see that. That's a cool place to put one, though. I love those angled builds to fill up space between two other, like, more straight buildings. They just fit in so well.
Thanks. I really appreciate that because I've been struggling with the placement. I'm trying to decide if I want it to be at a 45, if I'd rather have it be, I'm not sure how to describe it, like those stepped builds where it's more like, 3 blocks down, then one over, and then 3 blocks down. So it's more of like a 20-degree
Mm.
as opposed to a 45. Because those are a little bit easier in terms of the roofs because then they just kind of go in sections rather than having the entire thing be at an angle. And obviously, I haven't done any texturing or had added any details inside, no horses and stuff, because again, if I move the building, I don't want to have to move all that too.
True,
But I
true.
just, for whatever reason, it just didn't feel quite right. And I'm wondering if it's just because I haven't finished the church courtyard behind things. Like, so there, when you look between the buildings, there's just a whole lot of nothing. And
Hmm.
I'm wondering if maybe that's what's going on. But I'm glad that the placement seems to sit well because the idea was like, well, if you're going to have a blacksmith, you're not going to have the stable on the other side of town. If you want to get
Yeah,
your
you're going
horse
to want to
shoed,
stop off.
yeah, you're going to want to be very close by. So the idea is that you can't see it from here, but there's going to be I'm not sure what you want to call it, like a roofed outdoor section where the blacksmith can just like walk over to the stable, access everything, bring a horse over, shoe it, that sort of idea. I don't know if I'm going to get into like armor stand placement and stuff like that to like have like, we've got the statue data pack on the server, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get into that, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to have what is the last building in that section of town go up. There's still a lot of details. The roads and the courtyards and stuff still need all that. Oh, cottage core treatment. Hey, there we go. I still have to do a lot of the vegetation and stuff.
I really like actually how you've mentioned that the blacksmith will be able to walk to the stables because that is something that is tough to think about. when you're making these builds, because you can just sort of freely place things everywhere, but you're actually thinking about the story and the people who would live in this place. I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, I try to think about building in Minecraft like designing a video game within Minecraft. I spent a lot of time in World of Warcraft in my earlier gaming life. And the reveals of walking around corners into big vistas into towns, getting past these big towers and seeing shipyards or whatever it is. Also, just the manicured path of the player, because of course, in a map like World of Warcraft, everything, every tree, bush, rock is all placed. You're meant to go a certain way. And I like kind of guiding the player. It's something I do in art when I'm designing a background or something. You kind of want to guide the eye of the viewer. So I'm trying to guide the player into thinking like, well, if I just walk down this way, or like, oh, wait a minute, there's an alley here and I can sort of see smoke coming out there. Like, wonder what's down there, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I
That's
try
so
to,
interesting.
yeah. Anytime I can put motion in the game or any kind of color distraction. So I've really been hit by the grays in the medieval town. There's an awful lot of gray going on. So anytime I can put like a beetroot or a bush or a flower or something to kind of like pull your eye and say, oh, there's actually a little balcony garden down that way. I wonder who lives there. It's trying to entice the players to walk around. And really it's in line with the scale of everything. I kind of wanted to feel like if this was a map, if this was something that players could explore and do something in, then you'd want it to feel player scale and pathable. And I really don't like walking through Minecraft streets where you're banging off stuff. Like it drives me nuts. Like, so
gotta think about that.
Yeah, and so a lot of my other pathways in the game have either been wide open paths in the overworld, or there've been nether tunnels, which are like 3x3 or 5x5. So getting into alleys that are meant to feel narrow, but not frustratingly Minecraft narrow. has been difficult. Like they kind of have to be 2.5 or 2-ish, blocks wide. And if they're not, then you bang off of things. And if they're too wide, then it just feels like the houses are miles apart, because then it's like a 10-foot or a 9-meter wide space. And it's like, well, this is too big. So it's hard to kind of get that medieval kind of like piled on top of one another feel. But it's been going well. It's been a rewarding project. I've been working on this for like 9 months.
I know. I feel like I've been following you working on it for a long time, but it's so impressive what you've done with it. I love the scale once again, and just the details with that anvil, the chains that you've used. I forget about chains. I have to admit, I forget about them. But they're so good, and the way you've used them in this build is lovely. Just hanging stuff off the roofs is a big deal. Getting that grindstone up there, I see. All the little details make a big difference to the player as they're walking along.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think any kind of indication or hint at what could move.
Yeah, definitely does that. It adds motion, even though there is no motion.
Yeah, that little nuance. Moving on into the news this week, we have had another experimental snapshot for Java Edition 1.18, and that is snapshot number 4. We'll be reading the comparison to snapshot number 3. So the temples have been tweaked. Desert temples now tend to be partially buried. Jungle and desert temples no longer generate on top of water. Badlands and deserts are larger and less likely to show up as ugly microbiome splotches. Terracotta bands go higher in the world, and wooded badlands, grass, and trees start higher. We've made biome placement a bit smoother and less noisy. Again, this should result in fewer microbiomes. Again. And we've tweaked the general biome placement to reduce the risk of harsh biome collisions. Removed surface freezing for hot biomes and raised the altitude at which snow layers are placed. This should result in fewer weird things like jungle trees with snow on top. Made snowy slopes less dirty. Again, for real this time. Made the terrain in extreme hills less unextreme. So more extreme? And fiddled with the general placement of shattered terrain in extreme hills to make it fit in with terrain better. Reduce the likelihood of rivers being cut off and turning into steep, dry river gorges in mountain terrain. Instead, rivers will tend to either carve out a fjord through the mountain range or raise the terrain to form a saddle valley between the peaks. This should make the terrain friendlier for both walking and boating. It tends to make rivers a bit wider in general. Reduce the number of diorite andesite, and granite blobs on the surface. This should reduce the spray paint look of stone shores. Stone shores sometimes generate layers or strips of gravel, diorite, andesite, or granite, and stony peaks sometimes generate layers of gravel, calcite, andesite, or granite. Asterisk, that means no more need to destroy geodes to get calcite. More iron. You'll still have to go caving in mountains and climbing to find it, but when you do find it, you'll find more. Swampier swamps just keep on getting happier. They are less likely to extend far out into the coast, and the rivers in swamps tend to be shallower. Bigger copper blobs in dripstone caves. Go to that biome if you want more copper, either that or find a large copper vein.
We also have some lovely news from Henrik Nieberg this week, who has been sharing some images from the shattered savanna and beach biomes along the Minecraft coastlines on Twitter. The images are absolutely lovely if you'd like to look them up on his Twitter, but the shattered terrain seems a bit too common on coastlines, so Henrik is testing replacing some of it with flat beachy coastlines, which makes it a little bit easier and friendlier for the player, as was mentioned above a little bit. He's also been adding some grass to make beaches look flatter, but the trade-off was that the grass was perhaps not matching in color the way that it should. Overall, though, I'm kind of enjoying these changes.
So I know that we've been addressing the extreme snapshots or experimental snapshots quite a bit on the show lately. But since you're here, I'd love to know if you've had any time to explore the experimental snapshot progress over the last little while. Like, what do you think of these changes that they've been making?
I actually had not tried them until yesterday. I looked them up just for the show, and oh my gosh, I am so glad that I did. It was so cool. They made me so excited for Minecraft 1.18. I took some time to explore, especially the snowy slopes. I was very impressed by them, as well as some of the islands and the coastlines are just a lot more interesting now. Does seem a little bit more tricky to walk around, which I know we are going to reference a little bit later, but in survival mode, very cool to explore. I mean, looking up and seeing the snowy slopes rise in the distance is just something that I've been missing in Minecraft. I love it. As somebody who isn't thrilled about building handmade mountains, personally, not that big of a terraformer, very happy to have Minecraft do it for me, and I love the way they look.
I'm with you on the lack of desire to build a mountain myself. I'd much rather find one and build around it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can find something that naturally looks, 80% of what you want, and all you need to do is tweak it, like put a couple custom trees around, maybe add a waterfall or something that you want, or build something to it that you think would make a good addition, like a castle or something. I like that sense of like getting inspired by the landscape rather than just saying, there's a giant nothing here, I'm going to build a mountain.
Yes, exactly. It's so fun. As I was walking around, I was actually in a call with one of my other YouTuber friends, the Orion Sound. I was screen sharing Minecraft at the time, and I found this sunflower plains that led up into this big giant mountain. And I was like, oh, I could picture a cottage here in the fields and one on the little ledge over there. And he was like, yeah, and there'd be a bridge in the middle. And it made us want to build. And that's what Minecraft should do, I think.
I also like the notes from Henrik about more iron, about the calcite being in the stony peaks now. Because we've discussed on the show before about how amazing geodes are and how the first thing you do is basically strip them because you want the calcite.
Yes, give me all of that.
Yeah. I mean, we can make smooth basalt. So that's like you can destroy an ugly, well, I should say ugly, because I really like the basalt deltas in the nether. But if you find one that's just kind of out of place or in the way and you manage to destroy it, then you've got basalt for days, so you don't need to worry about the smooth basalt around a geode necessarily. But the calcite, it was the only place to get calcite. And so I think that having other locations that are either less likely to, be so rare or less likely to be vexing the player to destroy them and harvest the calcite. Because you could always just replace the calcite with something else, right? And then you'd never know.
I totally agree.
You'd never know.
It's definitely necessary. I'm building out of a lot of it on Empires right now, and I have destroyed quite a few geodes, so it's nice to have another source.
Looking at the other additions, like more copper in dripstone caves, I think that's fun. Another reason to go to dripstone caves. And more iron is also good because I know that I struggled a couple of my survival playthroughs on the Snapshot Snapshot worlds to find enough iron to then get myself geared up to go caving. I found that I was getting my butt handed to me.
Especially with these giant caves, it's so necessary. You need it.
And that's the other thing about this update that has me excited, is because I'd love to do something like Moria in Lord of the Rings, where you dig out a big cave and you make pillars and make it look like a big dwarven city. But just like you don't want to build a mountain, I also don't want to hollow one out by hand. So I will be looking for a giant cave that I can say, this is good enough. I'll start here. I know there'll be some digging, but I'd rather have there be some than have an entire, several dozen chunks of just solid rock and earth to get through, because that's one of the grinds in Minecraft that I no longer enjoy. Or I enjoy for a brief moment. It's like, yeah, this was fun for 45 minutes. I'm done. My podcast is over. I'm now going to move on. And I like to do some building, please. I'm also a pack rat, and I can't let it all despawn. Like, I have to put it someplace.
Oh, gosh.
And so that becomes a problem.
Yeah, no, me too.
Moving on into Henrik's images. I like the stuff. It's the kind of thing that listeners will have to go to his Twitter account and look at the images to really understand. But the shattered terrain really close to coastlines, I just always kind of thought is like, well, that's just Minecraft being Minecraft. But it's very subtle to then change, just like the dozen or 24 blocks right on the coast to a beach, and still have the shattered savanna behind that. And it seems to have a desired effect of a much better transition from crazy shattered terrain down to water.
No, I definitely agree. It has always been Minecrafty, even with the previous worlds when you'd have pieces of floating chunks of terrain and those shattered savannas. Y'all just be like, that's Minecraft. But that slight change really just made it a little bit more realistic to your eye. It's so much more interesting to explore.
I really like what he's been doing with beaches. I feel like it's creating more of a realistic way of where beaches would form in terms of the low-lying terrain, and then as soon as the terrain gets just a little bit higher, you no longer get beaches, but you get the stony shore, which I think might be one of my favorite features of 118. I don't know about you, but it feels like home here in Nova Scotia. It feels like a lot of the coastline that I walk around. Now, the grass on beaches in one of the other images that Henrik shared, I don't think I'm sold. I feel like in those images, the beaches without grass look better than the beaches that have grass. I know what they're trying to do, because the beaches around here, when I do have a white sandy beach, there's a sand dune, there's a grassy dune that separates usually some marshland or something else from the ocean, as just naturally happens in the world. But I don't know if it necessarily works in Minecraft, because it's not like waving grass in the wind in sand. It's a grass block with dirt underneath it, right? We don't have grass on top of sand in this game, and I think that would be the only thing that they could do differently, would be allow, grass to actually happen on sand, but I don't know if they're really going to go that far.
Yeah, something to smoothen out that transition would definitely be helpful. I do prefer the sand as well. It gives us a couple of beaches. Like he mentioned, the grass color is really what throws it off there with the difference in biomes. So something to blend it would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the only thing that I think would be a difference is that in those examples, the beach gets to a certain Y level, and at that Y level is what they change the blocks into grass. And so I think just remove those blocks. I think like have beaches go up to a certain Y level, and then after that, just have them not have any higher sand. Like keep the beaches low, have the nice grassy kind of like cliff nearby. I'm thinking about vacations that I've taken in Prince Edward Island as a kid, and there'd be sandy cliffs, not stony cliffs, where the beach has just been eroded over time with waves. And so you still have that drop, but it's like grass on top and sand in the bottom, and not a straight drop, but like a pretty steep incline. So I think there could be some fun stuff to explore there. But again, they don't want it to look exactly like the real world, because then there's not going to be much left for players to do.
True. You had to leave some to the imagination. I liked how some of it actually looked similar to Newfoundland's coast, especially those stony shores in particular. Those like it kind of just awkward cliffs in spots with absolutely no beach in between. I mean, that's exactly what we have here in Newfoundland, and we make the best of it. So I enjoyed seeing that. I definitely had a little chuckle at that.
Moving on into the email this week, we have a quick reply from Jack K to last week's episode. If you'd like to send an email in, that's spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. and it is concerning bedrock cauldrons and a question we had. I'm a bedrock player, and you can both dye water in cauldrons and fill cauldrons with potions. So thanks, Jack, and others for writing in and confirming the bedrock colored cauldron conundrum from last week. Say that 6 times fast. I write myself into holes sometimes, I swear. Also, I'm jealous. Like, I've tried Bedrock once or twice on the Xbox just to kind of experience it and be able to talk about it on the show. And I mean, I'm a Java player at heart. I'm not sure about you.
No, me as well.
There are some things where I'm just like, I want that. Like, why can't we dye cauldrons?
Bedrock has some amazing stuff. I agree. I am a wizard right now, and if I could have potions in cauldrons, that would change my life. But I cannot. I hope the Bedrock players enjoy it.
Sidebar, I actually saw a texture pack recently. I'm trying to remember who it was that made it. It might have been Germsy Boy, but all of the potion bottles have different shapes. So they're not just different colors, they're actually different shapes. And I think that's great. And it's two things. One, it's creative, but it also, for anybody that's like got colorblind challenges, like having a different silhouette and shape to a fire resist potion compared to a strength potion is going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
Because then you can tell which is which, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes for some of them, it's hard to tell now. Some of the ones that are that dark blue or the reddish color, like I could see how that could be an issue. And that would be so cool for decorating as well, having them on the walls in different colors and different shapes.
Do you play with the enchantment glint enabled?
I do, yep.
If you want something fun to test, if you remove the enchantment glint by changing the texture, I think it's to a solid black, then it just won't show up on any of your gear. Mm-hmm. You can then see all the different potion colors in Minecraft because it's that purple, shiny overlay that makes all the purples and blues look alike. So when you remove it, all of a sudden the fire resist potion is orange and speed is light blue and water, underwater breathing is dark blue. And you're like, oh, this makes so much more sense now.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, that enchantment glint is very bright.
Moving on to the main email this week from Birder24, a avid listener of the Spawn Chunks, traversing new caves and cliffs. Hello, Joel and GeminiTay. Before going to the end, the primary mode of transportation is walking. I am slightly concerned that traveling or traversing these new caves and cliffs on foot will be tedious and slow. Especially once we get more used to 118, the novel feeling of these terrain generations will steadily wear off, and I can see myself eventually getting annoyed by the very slow overworld travel and constant jumping. For one, sprinting resets you if you hit a block by not timing the jump correctly, meaning you will not be possible to sprint up these mountains. Pillaring up using dirt and a water bucket to get down isn't very fast. Something interesting I noticed is that both of these solutions use generic mechanics. Items like ladders, which you might expect players to use to climb, are simply not practical compared to the good old dirt pillar. Perhaps Mojang could expand ladder functionality or add some other climbing mechanic or item. Don't get me wrong, these terrain changes are absolutely stunning. However, at the current iterations, terrain generation is still very mountainous despite the latest tweaks to have more flat areas. In my opinion, Elytra will become even more essential, causing players to quote-unquote speedrun the early game. Horses may be more commonly used since they can run up and down blocks without needing to jump. What are your thoughts about traveling in this snapshot in survival? Do you think Mojang needs to revisit transportation, especially vehicle transportation in early game? Would love to hear your opinions, and thanks for the amazing podcast, Birder24. Who doesn't want to resort to auto jump? So I agree with the tediousness of going up and down, experimenting in a couple of snapshots over the first iterations of these experimental snapshots. I didn't get very far into the game because I only did like one stream. So 3 hours of Minecraft, like even if you're rushing, how far do you get in terms of your ability to be, transporting yourself around? It's usually by foot. I didn't even have enough iron to build armor. So I definitely didn't have Minecraft trails and rails and things like that. So my surface exploration tended to be a lot of up and down. And I also feel like a lot of it tended to be always mountainous. I didn't necessarily find or see a lot of paths between mountains that you can certainly do in 117 content. The plains biomes tend to be a great way to get around, whereas in the snapshots, everything seemed to go up and down by 10, 20 blocks. Even the flat or, rolling hills area tended to be a lot of jumping. And I noticed it. I don't necessarily know if it was something that I just need to get used to, or whether it just kind of like bit me as like, this is getting a little bit old. It could have also been the fact that, like I was dying a lot and having to go back and get your stuff and walking long distances without really doing anything. You're on a mission to go get your stuff. You're not like sightseeing and taking your time. So that I find was a bit of an issue. I agree with Birder, though. It all looks fantastic. I mean, every time they tweak something so far in these snapshots, with the exception of some small things, like I think they raised desert temples a week or two ago, and then they've now buried them again a little bit more, so it feels a little bit more like an archaeological dig. So that kind of stuff, I think, is better to like be reverted. But most of the changes that they're making progressively, I think, just get better and better and better every time.
Definitely, yeah, it's very impressive.
I'm just not sure how, I feel so far about traversing stuff. I have not so secretly been hoping for a minecart update for better mid-game transportation and a lot of other things. I think a lot of Redstone players and a lot of different avenues in the game could be improved by having faster or better or somehow different minecart tools at our disposal. Something to get ourselves up the sides of mountains faster before you have elytra, be able to sightsee as you go along. I think that just kind of opens up a lot of things. However, I also think that there's a lot going into this new snapshot development and 118. I don't think we're going to see any kind of technical stuff come along with the update.
Yeah, no, me either. One thing I would like to mention there, I do think that a simple change could just be to make some of those recipes a bit cheaper. Because right now, minecarts it's a lot of iron to get those rails, especially with how deep the world goes now. If that was a little bit cheaper, if you got a few more, or ladders even, if you got a few more for those sticks, I think that would make a big difference.
I think too that if you can find some scaffolding, then ladders you have to place on a block, so you can't really use them to go up a mountain. But you could use scaffolding if you're near a jungle. Once you get a little bit of bamboo, it's very easy to get a lot of it. Then you're kind of,
exactly.
You'd be stuck for string. I would imagine early game would be the harder thing. So then you can get up the sides of mountains a little bit faster. It's not the most attractive thing to leave up in the world, so there's that. It depends on whether it's your permanent home or whether you're just using it to scale a mountain. But I often wonder about things like having a rope in Minecraft. I've seen that in modded Minecraft as well, where people use rope to get down, not necessarily to get back up, but they're able to use a rope to get down something, and then it just looks like a rope dangling on the side of a mountain rather than using a water bucket or something like that. I mean, I guess the water bucket leaves no trace, but it all feels, I mean, in a way it's old school, using water to get around, but it's one of those things that I do think that there needs to be some sort of twist. Now, I know, Gem, on the Hermitcraft server this season, there has been some in-game and in-community movement to not fly around so early in the progression of the season. How's that been for you?
That's been very interesting. It is my first season of Hermitcraft, so when I joined and they were immediately like, so we're going to make a club for no wings, I was like, what? But I kind of love it. And going back to the mountain discussion, I agree they are difficult to walk over, but I kind of enjoy it. I know we want to do things quickly and efficiently, but stop and smell the roses for a minute, enjoy that early game grind a bit. And I feel like the mountains are kind of nice. Sometimes you maybe find one that you kind of need to go around, or maybe you're going to traverse over it and it's a big adventure. I could see myself doing a video on that big adventure, mountain climbing up with the goats. That's a video. That's definitely a video. I could see myself having some fun with that. At the moment in 1.17, walking around, you see everything very quickly. It is efficient, which is fantastic, but you can get 4,000 blocks in a reasonable amount of time. I've done it, unfortunately. It's not that fun, but, it gets old, I think, unless you're trying to be extremely efficient. So on Hermitcraft, when we had this No Wings Club started by Iskal, I played with no wings for 250 days, which was a long time. And I started my mega base, which is very tall. And I built this organic deer. And those are things that you really want to have wings for, to be able to go back and get a view of what you're doing. But honestly, it was really lovely. We traveled a lot on horses. We had these paths all around the world. We still have them and can use them. We're seeing people use llamas to move items, which I've never seen anybody use llamas for that functionality, but it's so cool to see somebody do that, to move through the world with this pack of llamas on a lead, moving your items from one place to another, which normally you just use shulkers for. We also saw people like Iskal and Etho using tridents with Riptide to traverse shattered savannas, which I think super viable method in the mid game for this new terrain. Definitely, if you can get your hands on one.
I've not used tridents. Have you used one?
Really? They're so fun.
Yeah.
They're a bit tricky, but they're so fun. Right now on the server, I am using wings once again, but it definitely allowed me to remember the simplicity of just enjoying some of those early moments in Minecraft. Sure, it's way more efficient to use the shulkers and the wings to carry your item, but a path for llama transport is way cooler and not something I've seen done a lot.
I've not used llamas at all.
Exactly.
You have to lead them? Like you can't ride them.
You just lead one and then the rest follow.
Oh, right, the llama train. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that now.
It's very cool. And yeah, nobody uses it because why would you? But now, I mean, if you need to track through a mountain or something and you need to carry your stuff from one base to another, maybe you use llamas.
I think there's probably a lot of that kind of going on behind the scenes at Mojang. This is pure speculation. I don't know for sure, but there seems to be a drive with the challenges of traversing the new terrain to use more early and mid-game options where people just will often just skip right to Elytra.
Slow down for a second.
Yeah, because there are those options like donkeys. You can put stuff on donkeys. You can put chests on donkeys and ride them around. Not the fastest thing in the world, faster than walking.
Faster than walking and very cool. You get some cool points from me for that.
Yep, especially if they look like a Supra. There's a lot of options there that I just don't explore. I wonder if my llama bias comes from my dislike of the wandering trader and his buddies. So the llamas are guilty by association of no fault of their own. Oh,
those poor llamas. They're so innocent. They're just trying to help you out. Also, you could put the carpets on them. They could be so decorated. I think it's really cool.
That's right. I forgot about the carpets too. Yeah, it's too bad that you can't do more with that kind of stuff. I think a llama wearing armor would be hilarious.
A battle llama, yes, please.
Nice. Well, moving on into the main discussion this week, I wanted to touch on the fact that GeminiTay has recently transitioned into full-time content creation. And you've got a lot of stuff happening on YouTube and Twitch. I thought we could chat about the ups, the downs, the road to get there, and what it's like now managing and maintaining your content going forward. So I'll put this again at the top of the discussion because I don't want it to be just a footnote later. Folks, you can follow GeminiTay MC on Twitter. It's GeminiTay MC on YouTube and GeminiTay on twitch.tv. So all those places are where you can keep up with Gem and what she's doing. Just quickly, how often are you publishing videos from the Empires and Hermitcraft server right now?
I do once a week from each server, which is twice a week, technically. So Empires on the weekdays and Hermitcraft on weekends. So that's working pretty well. Just 2 videos a week. Pretty simple. They're usually about a half hour, maybe 20 minutes. It's been working out.
And as far as your live stream goes, because I've caught a couple of them here and there, do you keep a regular schedule for streaming, or is it just kind of like whenever you have time?
I do not. Streaming, I mean, I was streaming a bit more, pushing towards getting Twitch Partner, but now that I have Twitch Partner, I've slowed down a little bit. I would like to be at a once or twice a week for streams, but sometimes I like taking other opportunities, like this podcast, for example, and taking some time off Twitch. So I allow it to be a little more relaxed over on Twitch. I don't keep a schedule.
I mentioned this at the top of the show, and congrats again for the massive milestone of hitting 1 million YouTube subscribers. How does that feel for you, given that the majority of this work was put in before you went full time?
Yeah, crazy. 1 million that's a big number. Yep. it's insane.
You're very comfortable with it, I can tell.
It's weird because like no matter what, like I said this at 100K too, it never feels it doesn't feel any different. You know, it's like when you're 9 and you turn 10 and they ask you how you feel now that you're in double digits and you're like, I don't feel that much different. That's kind of how it feels. Like I'm very grateful, but I don't know. It's so hard to explain. Actually, my grandpa and grandma came over yesterday and they hung my plaque up on the wall behind me, which is very weird and exciting to have those 2 plaques now hanging there. But they've been such a huge support system for me because, of course, as you mentioned, I was not full-time until June. So over this last winter, I was working in a hospital, doing a clinical rotation, learning how to be a lab tech. While I was doing that, I was also working at YouTube, but I was working out of my grandparents' basement, which they allowed me to set up in. And I basically went from 500,000 subscribers to 800,000 subscribers in that basement while I was working in the hospital. And it was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. Coming home after work in the hospital to then record hardcore Minecraft is very tough. But I got through it, and I got to come back this summer and celebrate 1 million with my community. And I'm really proud of that.
That's fantastic. Going from 500 to 800K while going to school full time that's a lot of work.
It is. Yeah. It doesn't feel like it though, because it's just so much fun.
You know, you're right. Like I like what I do as well. I can feel tired at the end of the day. Like being creative, being on podcasts or streaming or videos, like anytime you're kind of engaging and being entertaining is tiring, even as fun as it is. But I don't know where you found the energy at the end of a long day to do videos and stuff like that. Because all of your stuff is so upbeat. Yeah. Like it's just so present, you know, with what you do. With regards to the jump in subscribers, was that before Hermitcraft?
Yeah. I had a hardcore series running on my channel.
Right.
I ran it for 30 something episodes, and it did really well. I also ran Skyblock, a couple of Skyblock videos on my channel. They're currently my most popular videos, and they had a really big bump over this winter. Even though I recorded them in the fall, they kind of took off a few months after upload, which happens sometimes, and I'm very grateful that it does because it massively helps me when I'm away, not able to upload new stuff.
So the last time that you were on, we talked mostly about your creative work in Minecraft. So these ventures into survival, whether it's Skyblock or hardcore, those are your first or most recent, I guess, move, right? Like that's relatively new for the channel.
Yeah, definitely. With YouTube, I found it's very helpful to keep moving. Don't slow down, keep changing, keep evolving. It doesn't have to be massively evolving. I'm still playing Minecraft, but little things. So last time I was on this podcast, we were chatting about my creative builds. And that was not that long ago. That's kind of crazy to me that it did move that fast. But it began making survival videos as a main focus last summer. I did a bunch of thinking and what I can do to help my channel grow, because I was kind of stuck at like 200,000 subscribers for several months, and I was like, what can I do to mix this up? And I realized, looking at a few different super successful channels in the Minecraft community, that this personality type content was really important. So allowing your audience to relate more to you rather than to your art, so that they actually are attached to you as a person and will follow you through various series that you do rather than just one build or something like that. I love the art that I got to do and getting to express myself through Minecraft, but building large maps in creative mode wasn't relatable to a wider audience at all. That's why I was kind of stuck. So I decided that I wanted to be a YouTuber and not just an artist. So I brought my skill level down to an accessible level and started a survival series where I took the time to enjoy the early game, built an adorable little starter area, which I love. I used iron tools for a while, horseback rode through trails, and it turns out people really like that. And I really enjoyed getting to storytell through the survival aspect of the game, getting to go on an adventure, create funny moments. It turned out to be a lot of fun, and it came naturally over time.
I think there's something to slowing down in the early game and letting the randomness of Minecraft kind of guide you a bit. I feel like in creative mode, like you've got everything at your fingertips, and even if you're playing in a generated landscape and you want to build something, you still have something in mind, and you have all of the tools at your disposal to change anything pretty quickly. Even with the enjoyment of a slower early game, did you find it at all frustrating in those early days, switching from creative to survival? Because like, I just want some prismarine.
No, I think I set myself up in a way where I wouldn't. Like, I knew that my builds would be simple, so I built them out of wood and things that I knew would be very easy to get, because I purposefully did not want to be grinding. Like, so those creative builds were taking me like 40 hours of video. Like, I wanted to relax, I wanted to chop down some trees, farm some wheat, and chill in Minecraft. So I purposely set my world up in a way where I would be able to do that successfully and take it more chill. Do stuff that's kind of starter base, because a lot of players can't get Prismarine because they're not sure how to set up that Guardian farm. So it's really relatable to do it that way. And you can kind of bring it up into that getting Prismarine a little later in the world, like a few months down the road. But starting off at this really relatable level of not having stuff, just having wood and cobble, is really what the Minecraft audience likes a lot of the time.
I often hear about the divide. I hear about the people that are like wanting end game and wanting to rush to end game, and they can't. They just want to get Elytra and, you know, as much stuff as they can from mob drops and farms and things like that ASAP. I can appreciate it on a certain level. Like I definitely early game, I want to have some sort of renewable food. You know, I don't want to have to hunt for foods, even if it's a vegetable garden. Like I want something to eat all the time and not have to worry about that. But for me, I like going slow to a point. In the last few months, I've definitely restarted with a couple of snapshot worlds here and there. And going from a 4-year-old server where I've got Elytra and shulker boxes coming out my ears, and every block at my fingertips, I might as well be playing creative. Like if I want to test a certain block palette, I empty my ender chest onto the floor and be like, all right, what do we want to test? You know, like dripstone.
Right.
How about this? How about that? How about moss? And it's fun. And then you get into a situation where you're building with cobblestone and logs again, and you're just like, oh wow, this feels like default Minecraft village. Like how can I up the ante a little bit here? I tend to be like, well, I can build this way, but I've seen it all before, and it's an interesting challenge to try to make it look different.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I find myself missing that sometimes. Like I'm on Hermitcraft right now where we build very large things. They're known for rushing the dragon episode 1. Like that's just that's what they do. So recently I was playing some Abba caving with a few hermits, and I found a zombie dungeon, and I was like, oh, that makes me miss the early game, because we have no use for zombie dungeons on Hermitcraft. We have a giant Enderman farm. We have all of this giant like gold farms. Like we never got to the point in the game where we really needed that, and it made me kind of miss it. I was like, I want to surround this in some logs and some cobble and make something cute.
You could make a copper farm, turn it into a drowned copper farm or something. I imagine there's
true.
probably already one of those on the Hermitcraft server too. I guess
there is. I believe there's 2 or 3.
Yeah, that likely comes with, you know, the mix of the technical players on the server and then the building players, and I mean there's always a mix of both, I think, but some players just kind of lean one way or the other.
Yeah, I definitely love it. I love that they rush the end game and we get to see all these massive, like we push Minecraft to the limits. But it is nice to come back to your roots and do the simple stuff every now and then.
Yeah, I try to present chill content, you know, when I'm doing stuff, and I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from doing those early days of Minecraft and starting over and taking your time to explore certain things and different mechanics. And especially if you already have a situation, like for example, I mean, you're on both Hermitcraft and Empires, and there's different play styles in both. But for me, having the 4-year-old Citadel server, when I do start over, I'm not at a race to experience the end game, because I can, if I want to. If I get frustrated and I want to play endgame, I'll just play on the Citadel. And if I want to do something else, if I want to slow down, I can flip things over and play on something else. I'm thinking about getting into some modded stuff. So over the last few weeks, we've heard changes that are coming in 1.18 to lighting and mobs. So your switch from creative to survival would have also meant that you've had to light and or mob proof all of these builds, so you're not having creepers fall on your head. Did you find that an interesting switch, especially in a hardcore world?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm still having creepers fall on my head. It's fine, though. I'm making it work. Yeah, accidental mob spawners do happen. I do forget about that every now and then, but I tend to sleep through every night, try to avoid it as much as I can. And yeah, lighting in Minecraft 1.17 is a pain in the butt. It is. It's hard. Everything is covered in torches all the time. There's not enough light sources. So I'm happy with the changes that I've seen so far with that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Same reason. I haven't used a lot of candles in my medieval build because they don't give off enough light to really do anything. Yeah. So when they do, it's going to be a huge switch.
Game changer.
I'll be watching players like yourself and Pearlescent Moon and a lot of other creative players that I follow, like Whip and Mythical Sausage, because I just know that you all are going to come up with some crazy cool like lighting uses and still be like as excited as ever to be like, and it's mob proof. Like it's light level 2 and it's mob proof. It's amazing.
There's no creepers.
Something that I wanted to ask you about now is after completing your education, moving into the working world, but not necessarily in what you've been trained in professionally, but as a full-time content creator, what does your time management look like now compared to when you were making Minecraft content and completing, your education?
Oh my gosh, my world has changed. It's so different. School is so tricky compared to working as a YouTuber. And I guess that's probably a pretty obvious statement, but I feel like I have so much time in a day. I can actually have time for myself. I can have time to cook food and paint and do things that I like. When I started full time in June and announced I was going to be joining not just one, but two survival multiplayer servers, there were a lot of people concerned about my time. Like, a lot. And it's valid, I suppose, if I was still in school, but it turns out when you're working 40 hours a week, writing exams, studying, and going to class, all while trying to spend several hours a day also playing Minecraft, things get a bit easier when you only have to play Minecraft. There's still a lot to do, of course, but I've been really enjoying that I can actually take time off now, like to go cod fishing, like we talked about in the Render Distance pre-show. A typical day for me now looks like a cup of coffee in the morning. I love making myself a latte or a cup of tea. I do a little bit of editing or building in the morning, or talk to you if it's this morning in particular. And then usually I'll go out for the afternoon. I won't actually work. I'll go to a cafe, go on a walk, do something like that outdoors. And I'll come back for the rest of the afternoon and the evening and do some work, play some Minecraft, whatever I need to do. Usually I take every night off. I've been reading a lot. I love being able to paint again and just enjoy my hobbies, like playing Valorant with friends. Definitely have my life back now. School took away a lot of that ability with me working full time and being in school. It was impossible.
I remember not knowing what to do with myself in the evenings when I
Yeah.
finished animation school. So I went to university for 4 years, and then I did another year learning some tech skills in animation, and then I moved into working in television, which at the time, while long hours sometimes for deadlines, was still 9 to 5. Especially when I moved into
Right.
production management, because I was still involved, but I wasn't doing as much drawing. And I'd get home at 6 o'clock and be just like, what do I do now? I'm so used to being in the studio or the library until the wee hours of the evening, eating dinner at 11 and
Mm-hmm.
then rinsing and repeating in like 6 o'clock the next morning. And I did not know what to do. And it sounds like you have a nice handle on it. I find that there's a lot of workaholics in the content creation slash entrepreneurial online business, kind of realm. I'm guilty of it. I know I work almost 7 days a week now, and it's hard to take that time sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I like cooking, like you mentioned, and so that has been nice. People that are listening to this show more frequently will know that I have a new barbecue this summer, so I've been doing a lot of smoking meat and barbecue
Oh,
stuff. So,
heck yeah.
and that's not a quick process like that. Even just making like barbecued chicken is like an hour and a half, which is fine. I don't mind it. I enjoy the process of it, because it means that I kind of have to focus on just that, because I don't want to burn dinner. So it means that I have to slow down, and I've been pretty good at taking my evenings to myself. But right now my weekends are still, I will say, they're half days. I have my weekend mornings, but then I usually stream in the afternoons. That's where I can
Mm-hmm.
tend to fit things
I feel like that's
in.
still a good balance, definitely. It's something like I also usually work 7 days a week, and then I'll take like a 4 day weekend or something like that, like every now and then, rather than taking every single weekend off. But it definitely helps to just take an evening or take a morning. Like it doesn't have to be a full day. I would get bored personally, especially in the winter time here. I'm gonna need to be working.
Yeah, I think so too. When it comes to that kind of stuff with content creation, with only doing it part time, I guess I consider it a side hustle. I mean, it is part of my income now, but it's not a big part. Not certainly not like anybody like you that's full time. And even I feel the hamster wheel nature of the content creation work. So how
Mm-hmm.
how do you manage the, we'll say, expectations of fans and followers regarding content creation and that kind of stuff?
It can be so hard. There's so many demands, I feel like, just people are hungry for content all the time, which is great, but it can be really hard to keep up with when you are the sole producer of this content. You know, you're the writer, you're the editor, you're the actor, you're the whole thing. So I think it's really important to manage expectations and the audience perception. It's not something that I put a ton of thought into, and I think that's why it works for me. There's always, of course, the weird feeling of I should do more, I could have done more today, but try and just focus on what I can do. I notice when I look at your Twitch in particular, Joel, you have a schedule set, which is really fun. I I don't have that. So that means that your viewers have this expectation that you're going to come back every weekend, right? I assume. Do you find there's any pressure in that?
I think because I still treat it, I don't want to say like a hobby, but I treat it like a video game. So like if anything else comes up, family member thing, time with my girlfriend, an event that I want to do, a hike that I just can't pass up or something like that. I have no qualms canceling a stream. I'm just like, no stream this Saturday. See you tomorrow. I need to be outside today. It'll just happen. I haven't been doing that lately because I have been focusing on growing the channel, and depending on the weekend, this past weekend was the first nice one in a while. We've had a lot of rainy weekends where like I'm not missing anything, so I might as well stream. You know, people and friends are either on vacation with their family away, still not comfortable maybe hanging out with a lot of people because of COVID. Not me, but like other people might be just like, wow, we're not really ready to hang out just yet. So you got to respect that. But it means that there's just not a lot to do. And so I've been putting in the extra time on weekends. Now, as far as expectations go, I feel like I've been able to communicate with my community in that, yes, there is the expectation that Fridays at 3, Saturday, Sundays at 1, my local time is about when I start to stream. I go for about 3 hours. I haven't had any negative feedback when I have to skip it. I get more positive feedback and like, oh, we're going to miss you. Can't wait for tomorrow. That kind of stuff, which is really nice. You know, it's a nice feeling to have, but I don't have a super large community where the percentage of people that are just like, I want your free thing and I want it now, you know, which I know does happen. Like I don't see that quite as often as other creators might. The expectation challenges that I have a hard time overcoming are when I want to do something that's not Minecraft. Because I have other interests. I will get a very specific and a very different audience if I live stream any art. So I have some commissions right now, which I need to get cracking on, for doing emotes for Twitch. For folks that don't know, I've drawn my own emotes, and I did all of Johnny Pixelriff's emotes for him. Professionally, he was kind enough to hire me to do the work. And it was a lot of fun. And he was also cool with me doing it online. I finished up some of the final touches, I think, offline, but I was able to stream a lot of it as fun content for people to watch. And that is a different thing. But when I want to do something like play Satisfactory, maybe play Oxygen Not Included or Borderlands 3, whatever I'm in the need for, in terms of just like, I need to step outside of Minecraft and get a bit of a break, I find it very challenging to have any kind of we'll say residual viewers from my Minecraft stuff. And yes, I understand that Minecraft is like a super popular game compared to these other titles, but I mean, I'll watch the chat just go down by 80%, you know, when I switch games. And so that's the challenge that I find in terms of the expectation is like, I don't want to be just a Minecraft streamer. Yes, I love the game. I'm going to be playing it for a very long time, but I just don't want to pigeonhole myself into fans are only showing up for Minecraft. I'd rather them, like you mentioned earlier with your personality YouTube content, you know, I'd rather them show up for more me and my content than just Minecraft. And it's a difficult balance.
Yeah, it is difficult. And like you said, that personality is the key. That's what I was finding with my YouTube channel as well. I was uploading these massive creative builds and people were clicking on the thumbnail for the pretty build in the thumbnail, not for GeminiTay, which is fine. That's fine. That's how you grow when you're a small YouTuber. You want people need to learn your name, so you need to put something out there that they're going to click on. But I found it very interesting when I made that switch and people started clicking on my videos because of the name GeminiTay. It's a very specific switch. It's a hard switch to make happen because it's a mental switch too, I think, that you need to kind of, I don't know, you have to approach it a little bit differently. It's an interesting one, and I don't have a ton of advice on how to do it, but I know that a lot of people are trying to do that with variety gaming. And I'd love to do that as well. I've wanted to play Stardew Valley actually on Twitch for a while, and I haven't decided to do it yet. I've been focusing on Minecraft, but yeah, it's definitely something that I'm going to think about.
I've got a list of games that I know would be kind of like in line with Minecraft interests. And I mean, I tend to like building games or games that are chill. Like, I don't necessarily always want to play. I mean, Borderlands 3 is fun, don't get me wrong, but I don't always want like a StarCraft experience. Like, when I have a city builder, I don't want there to be bad guys involved. Like, I just kind of want to be left alone to do my thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and yes, there's mobs in Minecraft, but like it's a nuisance. It's not any real danger really, unless you're
Right.
kind of adventuring where you shouldn't go without enough gear. Like, it's at the end game on the Citadel, you know, creepers might destroy a build, but they're very unlikely to cause me any grief because if I die, the bed was 20 feet away. Like, it's fine. Something else that likely comes with being on a popular server like Hermitcraft is, well, the popularity of it all. Has the upshift in attention been something that you've noticed when trying to manage those fan expectations?
Yeah, definitely. The attention is fun. I was fairly used to it before. Was getting about 8 million views a month, and now I'm at 10 million. So it's a little jump, but it's not massive, so that it wasn't like a massive shock for me stepping into that. And I think that's very lucky that I got to do that. I got to establish an audience before I was invited into something like Hermitcraft or Empires. So I feel very grateful for that. The main thing that is different is that they both have this tight sense of community around both Empires and Hermitcraft, and it's got really nothing to do with numbers and just the feeling of the group, the support that you get, and the want and desire to see you succeed. It's absolutely incredible. I especially feel it on Twitch. It's so amazing to get to chat with everybody and see how everybody feels, and they're so knowledgeable about the Hermitcraft server and about the Empires lore. It's so interesting. On Empires in particular, all 12 of us are constantly sharing the fan art and the fan theories, and we're absolutely in love with it, and we're seeing what everybody comes up with, and we're like bouncing ideas off each other, like, oh, look what this person's lore said, maybe we can make that actually canon. Like, it's so much fun to see that and to be able to inspire a community like that.
That's amazing. It must be so just rewarding, you know, as a creator, as someone that's putting so much time and effort and art output into the world, to have that many people see it. It just must be so rewarding.
It's wild. There are no words that I could possibly find from this podcast to describe the feeling, but gosh, it's amazing.
I'm going to wrap this up with a question from Cosmic Dancer, a patron and a moderator in our community. Both Empires and Hermitcraft are popular and very busy servers full of content creators. How do you balance the planning and projects juggling between the two? So less about time management, more about your creative output going into each server.
Right. So I think the key for me is to make sure that I have that mind switch in between them. I have to think about them differently. Like, when I get on the Empire server, it is a completely different feeling than being on the Hermitcraft server. Like, I don't get them confused. They are fully different. There is a different mission on both of them. There is no demon haunting me on Hermitcraft, and I'm not a cottagecore little elf person on Empires. So they feel very different. I work on each one 3 days a week. I have a day in the middle to kind of like stream or whatever I'm doing and kind of think about it. That's what my day today is, basically. I just finished up a Hermitcraft episode. I'm going to move on to Empires. It's kind of interesting to balance that. I try to make them as different as I can. And I also, for the creative process, I have booklets everywhere on my desk, and I'll write down ideas. I'll be like, this person wants to collab. It's going to go here. Like, here's how Hermitcraft episode 12 is going to lay out. Here's how Empires episode 12 is going to lay out. And I have both of those things, making sure that I have them written down and in order and know what I'm going to do when I get online. Of course, my main worry wasn't for me and my balance. It was actually the audience being able to handle me having two worlds. So before I even announced that I was joining these, I made sure I set them up very differently visually in very simple ways. So using completely different blocks for the build, different Minecraft skins, different background music, different thumbnails, like completely different feeling series to the extent that I can and have it still be my style that people recognize. It's all to try to keep the audience remembering which series they're clicking on, and so far it seems to be working. I feel like I've gotten everybody used to the schedule. Everything seems to be going well. The expectations are definitely there and met.
That's really interesting that you've got them split into 3-day blocks. So it sounds like you don't bounce back and forth between Hermitcraft and Empires within the same 3 days. It feels like 3 days is Hermitcraft, and then there's a break, and then there's 3 days is Empires.
Usually, yeah. The only exception would be collabs. Like if somebody needs me, if I'm recording Hermitcraft and somebody needs me on Empires real quick, I don't mind hopping on Empires for an hour. It's not a big deal. I have long days I can hop on and do a collab. But like for my personal content of like building up my base, it'll be in 3-day blocks.
Are there I'm not as familiar with Empires. Are there other players that are on both Hermitcraft and Empires?
Pearlescent Moon is one of those players. She is playing on both. She's in the same situation that I am, and she is also rocking that balance. So I feel like we're both doing really good at balancing both servers. Nice.
I'd imagine it would be very confusing if you had like quite a number of people that were on both. Like, I want to collab. Cool. Where? Where are we collabing? What hat do I have on today? Do you have any background in like marketing or that kind of stuff? Because I agree with you in that, you know, looking at your YouTube page, you can very clearly see the difference between like the Empires thumbnails and the Hermitcraft thumbnails, but also just like the content feel watching one versus the other.
Yeah, it's definitely very intentional to have them very different, but I don't have any background in that. No, that's just, I don't know. I guess I've been on YouTube since 2011, so I guess my background is just YouTube. I'm getting used to how the audience responds to stuff, and I'm preemptively thinking of how I can help and make it less confusing.
10 years on YouTube. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
It's one of those things that I've noticed when in my personal art career, that you hit that 10 years, 10,000 hours, which, I mean, I'm sure with YouTube you hit a lot earlier than 10 years, but there's that stride of like knowing what you do, like really feeling confident and comfortable with like how a video does performance wise, what it looks like content wise, why did it do well, why did it not do well. I'm still struggling with that because I'm new. I'm only 2 or 3 years into like Twitch streaming and stuff. So I still struggle with like, well, that went well. Why? what's different about this? Was it like, did I just get enough sleep last night? Like what was it that changed, overnight in terms of why this went well and not? And I think the hard thing to do with all of this content creation is trying to separate the artistic output, which can be very personal and you can be very attached to it. And then if it falls flat from a business perspective, trying not to take that too much to heart.
Yeah, that is very hard. I agree.
And then you also have to think about like, well, you can't control people's schedules. Like just because you're having a rough weekend on Twitch doesn't mean that you're not doing well. Half the world could be on vacation this weekend. Like it's the first summer in a year and a half where the pandemic in a lot of countries has allowed for more movement, so people are just like straight to Wales. I'm looking at you, Pixel Rips. Like just, people are getting out and it means that there's just less people staring at their tablets and phones and computers watching content online, which was the opposite experience I had last summer. Last summer, I felt that there was an uptick in all of that kind of stuff. So I feel like in a way, while the pandemic has been very good for creators like us, there was a false sense of security maybe early on where there was just like a captive audience. And as that starts to dissipate a bit, I'm going to be curious to see how it all spins out.
Yeah, you definitely need to take advantage of all that and plan for it. Like something I know, because I speak to a lot of YouTubers, is they're planning for Christmas. Because Christmas is a super busy time, right? Kids have time off during Christmas, but you don't want to take time off during Christmas, so you plan for it. You make sure that you see that coming, and that's something that a newer creator may not know to do in July or August. They may not think about that, but you do need to think about what you're going to be doing and make sure that you're ready. I
did that last year actually, and I think got the rewards from it because it was COVID winter. It was Canada, as you well know, it's not the most friendly outside during December and January. And I just leaned into it and I decided to just stream as often as I could, play a couple different games as often as I could. try to introduce that variety. And I mean, I still got vacation. I basically hung out and played video games. I just was sharing it with people, and it did work out. So excellent advice. I can say with a stamp, does work. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Spawn Chunks. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the things that Gem and I talked about at thespawnchunks.com. Music for the show was composed by Johnny, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? Visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join the community, where pledging at any level will get you an invite to the Patreon-only Discord server and get us closer to our next goal, which is coming up very quickly. And that is the monthly Minecraft audio hangout, where we'll hang out in Discord on audio with a couple of our patrons and talk about what everyone has been doing in Minecraft. Currently at 282 patrons, the most we have ever had. That's up 5 more from last week, so welcome to all the new people. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And a special thanks go out to our content engineers, General Patent 82, Hunter 555, Jumbo Sale, Magma Cube Dude, and Yitz. Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. You can find us at The Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram, but a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast. Just poke a friend in the arm and say, hey, you should listen to The Spawn Chunks, and you can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. You can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com, find the RSS feed on the spawnchunks.com, and of course, the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast this week with more GeminiTay. Gemini, thank you so much for filling in for Johnny this week. This has been an absolute blast. You are welcome back anytime. Where can people find you and more of the content that you do online?
Thank you. They can find me at GeminiTay pretty much everywhere. GeminiTay MC on Twitter. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Everything I am up to online, including my illustration and design portfolio, is at joelduggan.com. You can listen to The Citadel Cafe, my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment, at thecitadelcafe.com. This week, we talked with Alistair about more Hades. We talked about the What If series for Marvel on Disney+, and a documentary about Flight of the Navigator. Highly encourage you to check it out. That's thecitadelcafe.com. And of course, you can follow me at Joel Duggan on social media and Joel Duggan on Twitch, where I am playing Satisfactory and Minecraft on a regular basis. Thanks for visiting The Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and so is Gem's greatness.